Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Fire Up. And three of us are fired up. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Madmouth. Pleased to be joined by George Eichhorn. Welcome back, George, for
Good
round
to be
two.
here.
And our third man on the totem pole here is Ralph Williams. Ralph, welcome back to our show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, George.
Ready to have a fast 30 to 35 minutes to talk about some Pennsylvania sports?
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready. I'm always ready.
All right, George, you're going to actually take the lead on this, okay? And then we'll turn it over to Ralph, and I'll get my final thoughts
Sure.
on this first one. Let's talk about the passing of former Pittsburgh Pirate farmhand Detroit Tiger Jim Price. George, lead in with this, and let's talk
Yep.
about the unfortunate passing.
Yeah, Jim Price, who was the backup catcher, as many of you remember, in the 1968 World Series that the Tigers stunned the world, beating the St. Louis Cardinals and the great Bob Gibson. Well, Jim Price had what you would call a minor role on the Tigers as a player. Obviously, Freehand was the all-star year after year after year, a great catcher. Jim made a great transition after his career into the broadcast booth. He first went to Channel 2, which is at that time was our CBS affiliate. Now it's a Fox affiliate. Anyways, he did sportscasting. Van Patrick brought Jim Price on board, and Jim Hendrick and Fred Snowden did some work there, and they had a really good sports team going. Ann Doyle, our friend Ann Doyle, was there too as well. Jim Price then made a career out of it. He was a very, very close friend of Mike Ilitch, the late owner of the Tigers. And Price was in the broadcast booth, both for cable TV and regular over-the-air radio, and worked with the great Ernie Harwell for many, many years, and has since worked recently with Dan Dickerson, who does the play-by-play. And Jim passed away. Unfortunately, he had a long illness and could not continue anymore in the broadcast booth. He has not been on since before the All-Star game. So they've been having fill in for him. But yeah, a great guy. He loved the community. Spent a lot of time devoting to his son, who is challenged with autism. He and his wife formed a charity for autism and to raise money to help out families that need help. So farewell to number 12, Jim Price. We're going to miss you. You're a great guy. I know, Scott, you had great memories too, and we saw him. You saw him on the road. I saw him at home, but I'm telling you, he was a great man, a great announcer, and he loved Tigers. Loved the Tigers.
So Ralph, what are your thoughts about Jim Price? I know you followed the Pittsburgh Pirates a long time. That's obviously your team anyhow. But, this guy was a part of your system.
Yeah, he was. I heard he was a really good person. And back in those days, athletes were great people because they blended in with the community, and they did a lot of charitable work. They did a lot of different things. Nowadays, some of these athletes don't even care. So I mean, that's what Jim Price was good for. He was good for working with people. He was good. He was good with the team. And that's, I feel bad that he passed away today. My condolences to his family. So.
Yeah, and again, I got to know Jim not only when I was at Tiger home games, but mainly during spring training. And I'll never forget the time when the Milwaukee Brewers and the Tigers played a 3-game series in Milwaukee, and Ken Cal and Jim Price were doing the broadcast. And I'm looking at Jim. By the way, you see that place called Fridays? Okay, my wife and I got married there. So really,
Oh,
wow, really, no kidding. Yeah, but I used to see Jim around the Grapefruit League. I bumped into him at the Mets. He's just a super guy. I don't think there's a mean bone in this guy's body.
no, not at all.
But I got to tell you though, when I was at Miller Park and I told him that, the biggest smile on Ken Cal and Jim Price, I wish I would have had a reaction to it. So, all right, on to our next topic. Garrett Carlson, 33, great number because it happens to be my lucky number, by the way, is excited to join the Penguins for an opportunity to contend for a cup. The 3-time Norris Trophy winner has accomplished, obviously, more than the most in the last 14 NHL career. He's chasing that elusive Stanley Cup ring. Now, bear in mind, okay, he's the youngest member of the new core four. You got Sidney Crosby, who's 36, and Jenny Malkin, 37. Chris Letang, 36. And he's coming off a historic campaign that saw him become the sixth defenseman to record 100 points in a single season. He's playing on the NHL's fourth worst team, the San Jose Sharks. So he kind of reminds me of Steve Carlton when he won 27 games for a poor Phillies team that I believe won 57, 59, George. So I'm going to give you the lead first on this. I mean, you talk about the Penguins and bringing this guy on with a new core four. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
We're going to be back in the with this move.
Yeah, he's a good player, solid addition to the Penguins. The Red Wings have always struggled with the Penguins. I know when the Detroit has played them. Obviously, they've split the two times they were in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Red Wings won the first get-go, and the Penguins, of course, won. And unfortunately, I had to witness that celebration, Ralph and Scott, on the ice at Joe Louis Arena as a reporter. But all that being said, I mean, you got some superstars on that team still. You still got a lot of fight, and you also have a lot of talent still. So I never count the Pens out. I mean, they are a good organization. They have been for decades. Mario Lemieux got involved, and that team has really been good. But yeah, I think this is a great addition to the lineup. And I'm just disappointed he didn't come and wear the red and white of the Red Wings, but that's another story for another day. Obviously, the Red Wings are trying to rebuild, and Steve Yzerman is doing a good job so far. So, but yeah, getting back to this, that's a great pickup, I think. Don't you think, Ralph?
Absolutely, guys. I think this is a great pickup. There are some people in this town, some of my other media friends or pundits actually, that are going around saying that, well, this guy's 33 years old, and that the Penguins need to get younger, not slower. So, because he's 33 years old. And I was the only one media person in this town that said that Kyle Dubas was going to do well in this town. Everybody had all these doubts about Kyle Dubas. I said, watch, he's going to do phenomenal things, and he has. Look what he did with this trade, George and Scott. He went ahead and he got rid of the dead weight on this team. He shedded salary by getting rid of the dead weight. Okay, the Gronlund deal was terrible. He cleaned up every mistake that Ron Hextall made, and he did it in a short period of time, what took Ron Hextall 3 years to do. Okay, so what I'm saying is Kyle Dubas is a genius. It's going to be between him and Omar Khan of the Steelers as to who's going to be the GM of the year in this town. Because, it's going to be tied between the two of them because they both have done phenomenal jobs of trying to get, both teams squared away. The Steelers with both lines of scrimmage, and the Penguins, they need to start winning the Stanley Cups. Mike Sullivan, he needs to start getting with the times with a little bit of things, and he needs to fix up his offense a little bit. And there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's a few guys they still need to get rid of. I didn't like the Christian Jarry signing for 5 years, but they did get rid of that deadweight Casey D. Smith. He was an below average backup. So a lot of things went down in this trade, and I was in favor of the Penguins, and I love it. I love the trade. I love every part of it.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'll say to close out the topic is this, okay? There's a reason why you call it the off season. Sometimes you're winners in the off season, sometimes you're losers. And judging by the new addition, the general manager that the Penguins have brought in, anytime you can get rid of a lot of dead weight in one offseason, you're doing really, really, really well. You're telling me all these guys that were no good? Well, my goodness, Ralph. I mean, really? I mean, and then you're able to get a guy like this here. How many times have you seen guys chase a Stanley Cup and they wind up in the right situation?
Right.
This guy, we've seen Ray Bourque, I think, win the championship. And I'm sure the list goes on and on about older guys that were able to go somewhere and then chase that elusive ring. Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, I'd like to see Jeff Carter. I'd like to see Jeff Carter win a Stanley Cup before he retires. He was with the Kings for a long time. We brought him in a few years back for some experience because we had some injuries. Crosby was hurt. Malkin was hurt. We needed some experience and we needed some leadership in the locker room. It was great to bring him here. He had a good season last year. We had an average season. But I'd like to see Jeff Carter. He's been in the league a long time. I'd like to see him get a Stanley Cup. That would be nice. So, I mean, there's some guys, and they're in the right position. I just hope that Mike Sullivan can coach it. That's all I'm hoping for.
Yep.
All right, one more topic of the night, and then we're going to go ahead and do your parting shot. We have a very light itinerary tonight, but they always say
Okay.
it's not quantity, but it's quality. And I got news for you.
That's right.
I picked the three topics here that I felt were really something that not only did we not have an opportunity, well, we didn't have what we just had, 24 hours ago. We did this on the Sports Exchange, right, George? But we have it now.
Right.
The Phillies, Michael Lorenzen, 31, no hits. The Nationals, 7-0. And in his second start with the team, complete game, 124 pitches. He has, 76 strikes. His pitch count is higher, the highest in a complete game no-hitter since Mike Fiers, 131 through a no-no for Oakland in 2019. We know about him in Detroit, right, George? But I got to give credit to manager Rob Thompson for letting him chase history a lot. Combined no-hitters that we ever seen, more than I think we should. I don't know if they're still legitimate, but they're there, so they're becoming more legitimate because they're popping up that way. But this is a 14th no-hitter in Phillies history by a guy that's only had 2 starts. George, please help me. Am I El Cupido, or did Dave Dombrowski fleece the daylights out of the Tigers?
Well, this was a situation we got to look a little bit closer to, because the Tigers knew that in this particular situation, if they could get some value for Lorenzen, that this was in the back of their mind, Scott Harris being the president of baseball ops in Detroit. And they worked really, really good with Michael. I mean, obviously, he was the team's all-star representative for the All-Star game up in Seattle. Remember, in July, he represented the Tigers. The pitching staff, Chris Fetters, and the staff here in Detroit worked really closely with him and, helped him out a lot this half season. And so despite the fact that they let him go, I think the fact is that they feel confident that they've started something here. This is a trend that Scott Harris has done in San Francisco and Chicago, other places he's been, that he likes to get a veteran and get the value high. Right. You want the most in return. Quite frankly, I don't think we got enough for him, okay? But the fact of the matter is that he pitched the no-hitter. He's a good kid. He's energetic. He's a good Christian. But beside that, he just is having so much fun this year. And he's rediscovered himself from being that long relief pitcher, short relief, whatever he's done in his career. Now he knows he can start. And I think that's an important signal that, again, Detroit helped him with that. Yes, I'm sorry he's not a Tiger anymore, but boy, I'm happy that this happened right in your backyard over there, not far from you, at least, Ralph Williams.
Right. Well, something, guys, a change of scenery is a good thing a lot of times. I mean, if a lot of guys have been with teams for a long time and then they end up going somewhere else and they reinvent themselves. They might have been a good reliever, but then had about 5 bad seasons and then become a starter somewhere else and end up pitching no-hitters and becoming an all-star. Yeah. I mean, it's all about changing scenery. Maybe he wasn't happy in Detroit. Maybe Detroit just didn't fit for him or something. And now he's in Philly and he's reinventing himself. And I'm glad. I'm happy for him. I'm glad that's going on. I mean, I always am for someone. We had a guy that was here in Pittsburgh. His name was Bronson Arroyo. And Bronson Arroyo was good in the minors, stunk up when the Pirates would bring him up all the time, just like Tyler Glasnow, okay? Both of them were the same thing. But as soon as they went to other teams, Bronson Arroyo and Tyler Glasnow became all-stars. Both of the teams, when Arroyo went to the Reds and then Glasnow went to the Tampa Bay Rays, okay? They ended up being all-stars. So a change of scenery cannot hurt for anyone, and it works all the time.
All right, good evening, Jeremy. And we'll put Candy Ebling's point up. Really good one, too. Go ahead, George, read it.
Sure, Candy. Thank you for sending this along. That was the coolest moment of my baseball career, going out there for the 9th, Lorenzen said, according to MLB.com. Just walking out of the dugout and hearing the fans go wild, it gave me the chills. It gave me the boost of energy that I needed for sure.
Now, the only thing I'm going to say about this whole thing is this, okay? Michael Lorenzen is in Philadelphia. You know what? They want him. They can pay him. And you know what? They've proven that they will pay people. What you want a good example? Bryce Harper. He makes a lot of money, right? Okay. And the list goes on and on. So, I'm
Yes.
happy for him. And Al Campana, say what you want about the way his tenure ended as a baseball exec. But when I was at the 1981 baseball winter meetings, he always told me there's three ways to look at the trade: the immediate, the short term, and the long term. And, you talk about how John Smoltz, okay, the Tigers had one of those deals where you got Doyle Alexander right away, and the Tigers were able to win a division because of him. And we all know how John Smoltz turned out. I think he turned out pretty good, right? On a World
Right.
Series,
Yes, he
landing in
did. Oh,
Atlanta.
absolutely.
Many
Yeah, it was a
divisions,
nightmare
many
against the
divisions
Pirates.
under Bobby Cox. They
Yeah,
won.
so the bottom line is there's ways to look at the trade. Yeah, Michael Lorenzen. And I'll tell you what, right now, the division of the Marlins, I believe they're the NL East, right? So as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned, I don't think the Marlins are out of it yet. But if the Phillies continue to get pitching like this, my goodness, this is going to get interesting over the last month and a half or so.
Three former Tigers there, guys. Nick Castellanos said he hit 2 home runs in that no-hitter. Former Tiger
Yeah.
third baseman and outfielder, and Gregory Soto, of course, coming out of the bullpen. He's
Yeah,
had a
Soto, yes.
so year. Soto.
Right.
And of course,
Right.
my man in the front office, Dave Dombrowski, who I always admired here in Detroit.
Right, he did
Oh,
a good
yeah,
job.
great-
Detroit.
great
I know a
GM.
lot of people said that. He sold a lot of the minor leaguers for better. Of course,
Yeah.
I mean, George Steinbrenner did it too, and he won championships. So I'm not going to sit here and blame Dave Dombrowski for doing what every quality organization that wants to win now doing it. Obviously the Tigers going through rebuild. A lot of teams are going to go through rebuild. Some it takes a little bit longer than others, but ultimately those that get through that rebuild, okay, end up making out well. The Baltimore Orioles went through a very difficult rebuild. It ended up getting their announcer suspended for the dumbest suspension on the planet. But meanwhile, despite all that insanity out for their television network, they endured a tough rebuild, and now they're sitting atop the American League East. And who would have thought that the New York Yankees were near the bottom of it? We may take on the Miami Marlins this weekend over at Lone Depot Park. I'll be actually at the Sunday game before I fly out to Detroit on Tuesday morning. Be pretty good stuff.
Two
So
things, guys, that
Sure.
make a good baseball team and that can build a baseball team: the front office and scouting. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Philly has managed to start scouting better. And if you scout good, Baltimore, look at them; they were sad forever. Now they're starting by scouting and slowly getting in some good front office people, getting some people in there that can work with these young kids. That work. If you don't have a good minor league system to build on, guys, forget it. It's over. And the Pirates had that problem, and it's over. Now the Pirates are like in the top 10. They're like number 5 top minor league system in baseball now.
And
All right, so
let's not forget the Tampa Bay Rays too. How they
Rays
built
too.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh.
the Rays have
With-
always
with-
been good. How
with
about
scouting-
Houston?
Scouting
How about
and development.
Houston too?
Yep.
So let me
I mean,
mention a couple of interesting points. Sorry to interrupt you, Ralph. Okay, number one,
That's okay. Go ahead.
I worked with the Yankees farm system back in the early 80s, and George Steinbrenner, to this day, the Steinbrenner family has always invested heavily into that. And whether you use them for your own good or whether you trade them, that's how good your farm system is. That's item number one. Okay,
Right.
and when you judge your farm system that way, these are about a bunch of assets trying to earn you something so that you can ultimately get to where you're going to go. We all know that everybody uses it differently. A lot of smaller market teams depend on it because their budgets cater to that situation. But I know
Right.
the Yankees have done it really, really well. The Phillies are one of those types of teams where they've got a lot of money and they use it well, and they've always had a lot of good executives down the road. So, to me, you make out of what it's not how much money you have, it's how you spend it is really what it is. And I think that a lot of it is attributed, Ralph, to what you just alluded to moments
Right.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and small market teams have to get value for everything. That's they have to get value for what they're going to spend for a player. They can't afford to just go out there and fork out $230 million for a guy, and then he's going to soil the bed. What has to happen is you have to get value, and if you can get value for your money, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, when I was
absolutely.
coming to Miami Marlins series, I talked to Dan Dickerson. He told me in short term here, okay, AJ Hinch and Scott Harris are going to do fine. That's what he told me.
Yes, they are.
And you know what? I believe in Dan Dickerson. This guy knows what he's talking about. He really does. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and like anything else, you know, the Tigers had Al Avila, and he made some major mistakes, and that's why he's not employed right now. Period. Nothing against Al, but you had a long time to get this thing righted, and now you've got AJ Hinch, who I think is a great manager, and his patience will be rewarded. Chris Fetters is a really good pitching coach.
Yep.
They've got a lot of pieces in Detroit. They really, really do. But you know, what about the Atlanta Braves? They've lived and died by the farm system as well over the years.
Yes,
and I could go on and on about a lot of different teams. I can all day long. But you know what? That's just how it goes. And
yeah,
you know, I mean, the Milwaukee Brewers, for crying out loud, they don't have John D. Rockefeller money, right? But you know what? All they do is
they always contend. They always contend because they have a good front office and they have a great
what about
scouting.
Craig Counsell? You think he's any good? By the way, for a lot of people who want to know, he did win a world championship as a Marlin. If that wasn't good enough, he won one in Arizona. So this guy is one of the most shrewd managers I've ever seen. And you've got a lot of good pieces with a lot of these good teams. So, you know, with that said, let me go over some things really quickly for the company. Just, you know, Fire Up is broadcast around the world. That's all. You know, that thing called the Globe. It goes everywhere. Okay. The audio version of Fire Up can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. We're almost at 900. So we'd like to hit 900 first, so we'll get the last 100. Okay, please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Send topic ideas, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Want to advertise cost efficiently? Call me at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Also, website www.southfloridatribune.com. Twitter @Tribune South. Candy Ebling's behind the scenes. She's in the chat. She's everywhere. More importantly, she's with us and does an unbelievable job. So, So, all right, Ralph, this is your time to have your parting shot because we want to make sure you have yours. George and I have all week to give ours. Give it to me, Ralph.
Parting shot is I want a parting shot out to my fellow Pittsburgh media people who doubted me when I said Kyle Dubas was the man for the Penguins job. And everyone, and as I mentioned earlier, everyone around here said that I didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, well, he was in Toronto. He did a little bit of things here and there. He helped Toronto get to, maybe the first round of playoffs, but that was it. And I said, let me tell you something. When Kyle Dubas gets here, and now I'm the one that laughs. You know what they say? He that laughs last laughs best. And now I'm laughing because I was right again.
And you know what? That's how we close the broadcast because Ralph had an opportunity. Ralph Williams got it right. And you know what? Ralph Williams and I and Mark Mancini will get it right on Saturday. Just let everybody know.
Oh, yes, we are. Yeah. Bums in Sports, man. The External Bum Podcast. I love it.
I wasn't sure what the name. External Bum Podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just put that one in the creative category. But anyways, you can hear this show here at 9:30 Eastern time. I believe it lasts until 10 o'clock or so.
Yeah, 9:30 to 10 every Saturday morning.
Beautiful.
347-205-9631 is number.
Yeah, that too. Okay, but anyways, it's good to be on there with you, Mark, and I guess Joe Kukulis. Is that what his name? I'll probably get killed here.
Joe Kukulis. Yeah.
Oh, I got it right.
Yeah, Mark always messes his name up. Mark calls him Kukulis. It's Kukulis.
All right, Mark Mancini's in a good zone, but he's one of us. So what can we say? So
that's right.
Madman and Mad Mouth. You can only imagine what that show would look like on any platform. It'd be anything but boring, like my new Motor City Mad Mouth show over at Eagle Communications will probably debut sometime this fall. We're trying to get a lot of other things worked out, including my book. So, meanwhile, that concludes this edition of Fire Up. For those that participate in the chat room, all I can say is a big fat thank you. And meanwhile, programming note: Fire Up will not be featured next Thursday night, as I will be in Detroit, but it will return 2 weeks from tonight. So, Ralph, we can't send you an invite next Thursday because I might be at one of my favorite restaurants, but I guarantee I'll be loaded, but I'll be on your show every Saturday, not on this platform. All right.
Hey, fast question for you guys. What's going on with Chris Archer? Is he still with Detroit?
I don't know.
Chris Archer.
Yeah, he was signed by Detroit. He used to play for the Pirates, and then he was with the Rays.
I don't know. They've some of the guys that Scott Harris has picked up, he's ended up dropping or dumping them. Let's be honest.
Oh, okay. So
one of the things that he's been doing is picking up a lot of guys that were a cup of coffee journeymen, if you will, in the major leagues.
Yeah, he was
I
horrible
apologize. I
here.
don't know if Archer's still in
Terrible.
the organization. I know he recently, though, has severed ties with a couple of those players that I just mentioned. So
Okay.
I tell you what, though, hey, you look at that waiver wire, and he's being much more aggressive than Al Avila ever was as far as
Right.
looking in some of these diamonds in the rough. I mean,
Yeah.
look what he did with, like we already talked about, with Lorenzen.
Right.
Nobody wanted him around. Well, Detroit took him, and they got a good half year out of him.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
one thing I forgot to do, by the way, and I won't forget because we're still live. Okay, Ralph, let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
Ralph Williams 737 at gmail.com, www.rwmedia.org. That's my media company. And also, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook.
George?
Yeah, and speaking of Twitter and Facebook, I mean, I've got a book myself, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Scott is featured in the book, and so are so many other great announcers we've had over the years, like Ernie Harwell and Van Patrick, George Blaha, Ray Lane, Frank Beckman. I mean, some great announcers in Detroit. The book is available. There's a link to it at the end of my column, which appears under the South Florida Tribune. You drill down to the Motor City Tribune, and I contribute there. And also, you can contact me personally at gicorn@yahoo.com, and I can tell you how to obtain the book. So great to be on.
I said my piece, but Jeremy and Candy said that Chris Archer is a free agent. We'll take it at that and leave it on that note.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for
so
doing
that
the
Thank
research.
you.
That concludes this edition of Fire Up. So on behalf of George Eichhorn and Ralph Williams, my name is Scott Morgan, Route to Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up, and we will catch you 2 weeks from tonight. Good night, everybody.